Welcome to the Harmony Channel. Excited about this conversation we're going to have today on Wednesday. Jacob Wells, who's one of the co-founders of GiveSendGo, reached out to me over X, suggesting that I was uninterested in the truth as it relates to Karmelo Anthony and why he's being allowed to fundraise on GiveSendGo. I'm not sure what sparked Jacob's kind of aggressive tweets or posts at me, but we're more than happy to have him and have this conversation. Jacob Wells, welcome to Harmony. Thank you for making the time for us today. We appreciate it. So let's just start there. What did I say that made you reach out and suggest that I was completely uninterested in the truth? I don't even remember saying anything about anyway, go ahead.
No, I didn't say anything like that. All I said was, hey, happy to jump on and have a conversation. So
Hold for a second. Hand me that laptop bot. Go to my Twitter feed. I'll keep going. I'm sorry. But I just want to.
unless there was a previous conversation, I just know today I reached out because I saw a post with Sarah. And so my response today was just, hey, happy to jump on and talk about the Karmelo campaign. That's what I posted today. So I don't remember anything other than that. Was there something different?
Yeah, let me find it. And not to be, I don't care. Look, I'm aggressive. People are aggressive. I don't know if I care one way or the other.
Yeah.
But there was something tweeted at me about Proverbs, and because it is evident you aren't looking for the truth. Proverbs 26:4.
Oh, no, yeah, but that was in response to someone completely different.
Oh, it looks like it's in response to me. I posted something about
Okay.
the woman in Kansas City that stabbed a firefighter and killed him.
Yes. Yeah.
And
anyways,
it doesn't matter.
Yes, it doesn't matter. That guy's just been kind of trolling at me, and I've responded many times to his posts, and he's just not interested in listening to what I have to say. So he can continue to troll. So that response was directed towards him. But I do think that there were some, I don't say not mistruths on your part that I saw. I didn't see anything, but I did see that you had Sarah
Fields on
recently. And lovely lady, she sounds like a great person. And we've gone back and forth a couple of times, and she's just made some misstatements that I thought it was important because she has a pretty decent sized following that needed some correction as far as the truth of what was going on. And so when I saw that she was on your show, that's what prompted for me just reaching out and saying, oh, you had her on recently. Maybe I should jump in and say, hey, let's give a clearer picture. I mean, I would consider someone like Sarah on the same side in the sense of like how we think, how we go about our thought process, what we stand for. But there were a couple things that she said that just weren't ringing true with what was actually taking place. And so I wanted to address them.
All right. Well, we'll get to Sarah in a minute. Obviously, I'm a fan of Sarah.
Sure.
She's a courageous person in my view, and she's going after Dominique Alexandre or whoever that criminal is that's the spokesman for Karmelo Anthony's family. But let's deal with GiveSendGo just off the rip. Let's clear up you all's involvement. I think GoFundMe wouldn't allow the kind of fundraising that Karmelo Anthony's family is doing in his defense. GiveSendGo is allowing it. What's the difference? What's you all's position on someone charged with murder using your platform to not just raise money for the defense? They've now changed it to, living expenses.
Yeah, and they didn't actually change it. So that's a misconception too. It was open from the very beginning that it was going to be used for the family's needs throughout the duration. We had conversation with them to just like lay that out a little bit fuller. So they updated the campaign, but it was open from the very beginning what the original description allowed for. And we sent out an email to everyone that gave to let them know that if they felt at all that something was miscommunicated with them, that they could ask for a refund. Nobody, or very few people did. Out of the 13, 14,000 people that have donated, I think 10 people said they wanted a refund. So, but our position, and it really stemmed early 5 years ago, when a kid, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Kyle Rittenhouse, found himself in the position that he found himself in. And we were just a small little crowdfunding platform, had hosted a couple campaigns that might have been on the edge of things that, you know, rubbed people the wrong way. But largely a small platform catered mainly to missions trips for people going from a marketing perspective. We were open to pretty much anything. And when his campaign was kicked off of GoFundMe and every other platform, all the other crowdfunding platforms, Facebook shut them down, whatever, it landed on our platform. And to be frank,
you're talking about Kyle Rittenhouse. Let's just for clarity.
Yes,
Kyle Rittenhouse got kicked off every place else. You guys were open to it.
Yeah, it landed on our platform. Again, we're a platform. We're not advertising for these. We're a platform, and it landed on our platform. And it wasn't Kyle Rittenhouse that actually even set up the campaign. It was someone completely disinterested in the sense of no relation, no connection to Kyle. He just saw and said, hey, I know this platform, GiveSendGo. Let me see if they'll allow it. And we prayed about it. We saw massive amounts of hate from the left at that moment, massive amounts of misinformation being posted throughout the media about the situation. And we said, well, you know what? There's actually a principle here that people ought to be presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, not public opinion. And this is actually, it's a biblical position, but it's actually a Western, our rule of law derives a lot of value from that presumption that we give people. And so we allowed that campaign, and then that kind of opened up the door where people said, well, here's a platform that's just not canceling people whenever, like GoFundMe had been and still does, canceling people for all sorts of different things beyond even being accused of violent crimes. And over the past several years, more and more have come to our platform, like the truckers up in Canada, where we had to testify before Parliament around that. And Daniel Penny's campaign was another big one. I'm sure maybe you even remember there was a rancher out in Arizona who shot what was thought to be some illegal immigrants coming across his property and killed somebody. Jose Alba in New York City, a bodega worker who stabbed a guy that was coming behind the counter. That was kicked off GoFundMe on GiveSendGo. So we've had many legal defense funds for people that were accused of violent crimes, accused of murdering people by the prosecution. And what ended up coming out was that in court, there was a different narrative. There was truth that was uncovered that wasn't heard about prior. And so we said, you know what, this principle of presumption of innocence and not ruled by mob really ought to be preserved, even in difficult circumstances. And that leads us to where we are now, which is Karmelo's family. And again, I'll make a distinction here because Karmelo's family did not create this campaign. Just like Kyle Rittenhouse's campaign was created by somebody that was not connected, not related to Kyle, just somebody looking to do good by Kyle. Karmelo's family didn't create this campaign. Somebody else that was unrelated, uninterested in that respect, created the campaign wanting to do something good for the family, knowing that as a family in a very difficult, trying time, they would probably need some support. And so that's how the campaign was started and began to raise a bit of money. After it had raised a decent amount of money, the Anthony family was connected to the campaign to receive the funds, and they asked that the person that had started the campaign be removed from any ownership of the campaign as a campaign creator. We talked that through amongst the campaign creator and the family, worked out. They said, okay, everything's fine. So the Anthony family took over the campaign. And then in the process, a lot of fake news came out, as it does around all of these high-profile events, about the spending of funds, the use of funds, that it was being used for things like buying a Cadillac, fake news, not true. Buying a new house, fake news, not true. Lots of fake news. and a lot of racial tension narrative around it. And I get the fact that it was a black boy and a white boy. So I get that there's on its face a race difference there. Our position at GiveSendGo was, pull race out of it. What the right really should be doing, and I would consider myself one conservative Christian, went to school to be a pastor, love people, understand that Jesus died for the worst of worst, including myself, that pull race out of it. The right, as being principled people, ought to be saying, and this is what I didn't see, is that, you know what, this is a horrible situation. The facts don't look good for Karmelo. According to what we've seen so far, the police report that's come out, facts don't look good so far. Of course, there could be information that we don't know yet, but that's to be seen by the courts. But he ought to be given the same affording that was afforded to Daniel Penny and Kyle Rittenhouse, which was they were being accused of murder. They were, even though it looked much better in their circumstances, in the sense of maybe more of a self-defense, like much clearer self-defense from the facts, that Karmelo ought to be afforded that same presumption of innocence until proven guilty in a court of law, not public opinion, because as you begin to erode the principle for anyone, you begin to erode it for everyone. And that's a difficult thing to uphold because these aren't fun campaigns. These aren't like happy-go-lucky campaigns, somebody's adopting a child like we do have. I mean, we're in over 80 countries, campaigns around the world. So, I think the big things that I wanted to somewhat push on were the Anthony family they didn't set up the campaign. It wasn't like they were the ones going out after it. Now, they may have tried to set up a GoFundMe. I don't know who set up. I had heard that GoFundMe shut it down, whatever. But I know on our platform. And then the use of funds, it was stated right at the beginning that there was going to be some flexibility. They have stated, hey, listen, we are using the bulk of this money for his legal defense. That's where it's going. But there are some other concerns because my husband's work has been getting threats. He hasn't been able to work as a result of this circumstances. We're down some income as a family, and this is also going to provide us some safety because of the tension around it, which I somewhat get. And then also being principled on the freedom of speech side, it's like we used to be on the right, people that said, you know what? No, we're not going to cancel people. And now it's been amazing to me how many people have been like, cancel, 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 shut it down, cancel. And I'm like, we could get into that, but I don't feel like that's the best path to take. And so that's our position. That's where we're at. And I'm happy to field questions, talk around it, navigate it. Happy to.
Jacob, I think you've made a very compelling argument that, hey, we need to be consistent in our principles and values. If Kyle Rittenhouse and Daniel Penny are allowed to raise money in their defense and you took bullets for that, GiveSendGo on the left, people were very upset. How dare you? We, on the other side of that, I hate to call myself a conservative. People call me a conservative. I'm a Christian. But we need to be consistent in our values. And we shouldn't be just like them. And so I get your position. And I get why you wanted to come on and be publicly say, hey, guys, remember, I took bullets for Kyle Rittenhouse and Daniel Penny. Don't turn on me now just because the Karmelo Anthony family you don't like. Let's be consistent in our values. I completely understand your position. I'm glad you reached out. I do want to ask a few clarifications. You said 13,000 to 14,000 people have contributed to their campaign that's raised what at this point now, $500,000 or more?
Like 515, 520,000.
And so there have been people like me that have speculated, perhaps erroneously, that are people really contributing to this, or is there some NGO, is there some large donor who's taken this thing to the next level? your contention is, or your information is that you have access to, is that no, people are contributing to this $10, $15, $25 at a time, and it's risen to $515,000. Is that accurate?
It is accurate. There's been no signs that we've seen so far of any illicit, illegal activity, of money laundering, of anything that's nefarious that's happening around the campaign. There are, I can say, there are many people that have donated multiple times, and sometimes they do it because it gives them another opportunity to post a comment. These are public forums in many ways.
Oh, you can't comment unless you donate.
Yeah, there's a $5 minimum to donate, and that's what's required in order to get a comment posted in the section. You can send a prayer message, no cost to send prayer messages to the families on GiveSendGo campaigns, because we believe in the power of speaking life into people, and that function can be used for that. But so far, we haven't seen anything that would red flag this outside of any. There's always card testing in the world of online payments, and people just trying to be messing with campaigns, and that happens across the board. So nothing has happened on this campaign that would say, oh, there's some like weird money laundering scheme that's going on. These are legitimate donations from people all around the country and even overseas. And I will say, I think a lot of it's driven really by the racial narrative that has attached itself to this, particularly by contributors on the right. We saw this with Daniel Penny. And this is why, like, you can kind of see these things over time play out. But Daniel Penny raised almost $3.5 million. But it was because the mainstream media, they immediately made it a racial narrative and painted Daniel Penny, this white military veteran, as this like racist and going out to kill black people. And the byproduct of that narrative coming from the mainstream was it emboldened the right to get out there and to challenge people to support Daniel Penny. And what happened was lots of people did, because it was a backlash to the narrative of the mainstream. I think if you were to look at this, the exact opposite has happened, which is the alt media came out screaming the same narrative that they over the past 5 years, 10 years have claimed the mainstream media of doing and being disparaging of, have now done the same thing with this campaign. And it's emboldened the left in their like, no, we really want to see justice for Karmelo, in the sense of making sure that he gets his fair day in court instead of being railroaded, in the same way that people on the right came out for Daniel Penny. I think that that's what's happening here with this campaign for Karmelo, that if the narrative on the right wasn't so vitriolic around the race piece of it and really creating that tension, that he probably would have raised a lot less money. But this is how these things work. They get in the media, they get driven. Some people are genuinely going after reporting on it. Some people are just trying to get clicks, all the different realms around it. And it drives people to the campaign, drives them to donate. And so I think under normal circumstances, I don't think he would have raised as much money. I think because of the controversy around it, it's garnered more in donations because of it.
I think there's some truth to that. I don't think they're totally analogous as you've laid out. I don't think they're totally equivalent, but I do think there is some truth to that. The right, as you describe them, are the people that were pounced on this case. If there was no 10, 15-year Black Lives Matter movement that said, hey, white people are just out randomly killing black people and everyone's acting like black lives don't matter, if there wasn't 10, 15 years of that messaging, just that steady drumbeat,
right,
I think people would be less interested in this case and wouldn't be passionate about, see, this proves the other agenda. But regardless, I think you've raised a legitimate point that the vitriol around this actually attracts people, and people have their political camps. They're very tribal about their political camps.
Right.
People are very tribal about this skin color thing. We've been made, or people have been made, to go down those rabbit holes and those paths, and it's actually benefiting the Karmelo Anthony family. The other question I wanted to ask you, and you may be uncomfortable answering, but I just want to ask, you said someone else started this campaign,
right,
and then the Karmelo Anthony family took it over. And so when I heard that, it almost sounds like to me people rush to GoDaddy to lock up some website or some phrase that maybe become popular, and then they sell it to the person that actually really needs it. And was there some sort of financial transaction in terms of getting that name and that GiveSendGo in the name of Karmelo Anthony's family under their control? Did they have to surrender some of the money in order to get the person to give them control of that?
That's a great question. I appreciate you asking it and thinking through that deeply. There was not, unequivocally was not. And I'll say that just because we have a process. We have a whole team here at GiveSendGo, and the team is verification and payouts, ensuring that money goes to the appropriate party. So you can't just create a campaign and then collect the money yourself. We wouldn't allow that to happen. And people try to do that. Oftentimes they try to take advantage of notable situations, things that are in the media like this, and throw a campaign up. We have a team that screens all of that on the prior to payout and disbursement, and we check all of these things. So we wouldn't have let it happen even if they tried to. We would have ultimately found the family ourselves to make sure that the money got to them, because ultimately that comes to our, it's put at our doorstep to figure out and make sure that funds go the right places. So yes, money there was no even hint of that in the process, and the person that created the campaign doesn't really have the right to make that determination, because it's incumbent upon us, for the preservation of our platform, to make sure that when someone's donating and the campaign says it's going towards the benefit of so-and-so, that it's not just going to some random person with hopes that they'll deliver it to that family or whatever. So we have a full process. We have a full team that takes care of all that stuff. And so none of that happened.
The other thing, and I'm willing to be wrong on this, and some of the things you're saying are, because I came out very early, like, I just don't believe that black people, I'm black, I'm not ashamed of being black, God made me this way. Thank you, God, for making me this way.
Yeah.
However, I did make the argument very early on. I was like, hey, man, black people are some of the worst tippers in the history of America, and we're really giving all this money to Karmelo Anthony's family, and I was very suspicious of it. I think you've disabused me of that like, no, we're actually doing this. And then, so now go ahead and tell me and further break my heart. Those are real people writing these comments on this GiveSendGo. Though I should believe that people actually think the stupid things that I see written on these donations.
So
those are accurate.
Yeah, that's another good thought process. I will say, we have seen moments before where people on the opposing side of a campaign go into a campaign, make a donation for the sole purpose of making it look worse, because they want to exasperate the issue. So I can guarantee you, just because I recognize human nature and the inclination of people and the desires to do things that they probably shouldn't, say things they shouldn't, that there are many of those comments are legitimate and true, posted by people that actually think that. But I wouldn't put it past people, because we've seen it happen before, people on the opposing side to spend the $5 to continue to exacerbate the issue by just spending $5 to say something hateful to make it more pronounced. And so, it's unfortunate. I do say that as difficult as some of these things are and the things that are written on the campaign page and some of the comments can be, I actually think it's a public good. We've dealt with this, and I say that in the sense of the media early on, they were really pushing us to censor and censor and censor. And I'm like, you know what? When you get into the censorship game and you take this thing that you don't like, and I don't like either because it's got some tension around it, and you relegate it to the darkest corners of society, it only festers and gets worse. And I think that that's what we're seeing as a byproduct of the tension we're seeing in society, is that that's what we did for the past 10 years. I say, you know what? Let's bring this to the light. Have this campaign public so that people can see it, people can ridicule it, people can discuss it, and that in that process, we actually create a way for us to diffuse the tension. As difficult as it actually is a diffusing mechanism because it's out in the open, it can be discussed. Free speech actually does that. Working on principle does that. I said this on a podcast recently. I said, the incredible thing about principle is that it is actually unifying. It brings people together. So when you stand on a principle like what we've done with presumption of innocence and say, hey, this applies to everybody, it actually starts to bring camps together over time. And the reason why we're seeing some of the tribalism bubble up again in society, where I think for a long period of time it was diminishing, is because we've started to undermine principle. And that creates division. Whereas applying principle across the board actually begins to unify people. It robs the other side. I say, you know what? It will really, in many ways, rob Karmelo Anthony's family or community or whatever the right to riot or something if he's found guilty, because he will have been afforded the same thing Daniel Penny was and Kyle Rittenhouse. Like, they can't cry, oh, the white supremacists at GiveSendGo shut us down and nobody allowed us a legal defense fund. It's like, no, you actually raised $500,000. You got the best of the best. There's nothing to complain about now. So it actually, to me, it brings the temperature down as much as it's difficult to swallow. It's a hard pill to swallow. I actually think it's a step towards the right direction. And it is. It's one of those things. We wrestle with this constantly, and we also say, we don't always. I'm not God. I know I'm not God. This is the value of believing in God, is that means I'm not omniscient. I don't know everything. So we're going to navigate this with grace. We're going to love on people. We're going to try to recognize our own humility in it, that we may get things wrong, and afford this principle to everyone as best we can, and still navigate that. Okay, is this the best way for our terms of service to be structured? Should we make some more, crafting around it to say funds raised can only go to a lawyer? And we've had these discussions, and we're trying to figure it out. Like, these are fragile, tense things. What we have said is we're not going to change this mid flow with this campaign and just be like, okay, no, we're doing things different now. It's like, no, we'll wait until this campaign's over, and we're still talking around, but maybe there's something in the future where we'll craft how these campaigns around high tension issues could be, where it's like, oh, it's only go to an attorney or things like that. So all conversations we're having.
Final question, let you go, Jacob. Thank you for taking the time and making the time for us. And I'm sure probably this information's public, and I could punch it into Google and find out, but of what percentage of the money does GiveSendGo take of what's donated to a particular campaign?
Yeah, no. So early on, we took a step of faith. All the other platforms, pretty much all the other platforms, were charging a platform fee for the use of their service. So GoFundMe was 5%, meaning you give $100 to your friend's, house fire fund. And GoFundMe would take $5 off the top. And then there's the credit card processing, and MasterCard and Visa don't give discounts. So there was a 2.9 5% credit card fee on top of that. We early on said, well, it doesn't seem to make sense to take money from the people that are raising it. They need the money. They're in a difficult situation. Why don't we be free? We won't charge a percentage. We'll be free. And we'll just ask the people that have the money, the givers, they're there to give. They have a generous heart because they're there to give, to give us a little bit extra to keep us free if they want to. We'll make it voluntary. And what we found in taking that step of faith, just to be a free platform, not charge anything, again, that for us, 2.7%, we keep lowering that amount towards MasterCard and Visa because our volume grows. We can negotiate that rate lower and lower, what they get out of it, because we want it to benefit our users. But that does go to MasterCard and Visa and the payment solutions. For us, we said we're going to be free. We're going to operate on the voluntary generosity of our users if they choose to give to us. And that's what happens. So we don't take a percentage. People voluntarily give us money. Givers give us a little bit more if they choose to. So they make their $100 donation to the campaign. They give us an additional, $3, $5, $10, whatever they choose in that process. And it's actually worked out. Givers, we found that givers were actually, that was their inclination. So they were willing to give a few extra dollars to keep us free. And then more money went to the campaign owner. So it wasn't coming out of the money that they needed. So that's our financial process. We said this, I said this to Fox the other day, because there was like the charges of the only reason why GiveSendGo is doing this is because they're financially, it's all about money to them. It's like, no, you know what? We are a business, and we have 40 plus employees and there is a business model to this, but our incentive isn't purely financial. It's actually much more, our mission statement is to share the hope of Jesus through crowdfunding. And we have a prayer team that calls every campaign and prays with them over the difficulty of the moment that they find themselves in and shares that hope as best we can. So that's our driving motivation. And so I said, hey, you know what? Maybe to disperse and dispel that notion, maybe we just give the profit of this campaign away to some charity that would, deals in some of this type of area or something. And that was a thought that we've talked about in the leadership. It's like, should we do this? Would this dispel that? But yeah, our platform doesn't take a fee. We operate on the generosity of our users. The payment processing fee goes to MasterCard and Visa. And profit isn't our driving motivation. It's, just an obvious element of having a business, but we want to share hope to people in difficult circumstances.
Jacob, you just did an outstanding job. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for making the time. We appreciate the information. That's Jacob Wells. He's a co-founder of GiveSendGo. Came up with a pretty solid explanation, guys, for what they're doing as it relates to Karmelo Anthony. Love them, like them, hate them, whatever. They're God-fearing Americans. Good luck to Jacob Wells and the people at GiveSendGo, and keep praying for Austin Metcalf and his family. We'll see you next time on Harmony.
Stop fighting and stand tall. We used to be a nation, one united. Now we're headed for downfall.